Now that the weather's warming up a little bit and I can actually start spray painting outside, I decided to clean up these rock rails that I picked up for the FJ probably 6 or 7 months ago. You can see I've already got one stripped down, that nice shiny steel. The other one I haven't gotten to yet at this point. You can see it's covered in this Herculiner type material. It's just kind of a bed liner, rubberized bed liner that was not applied very well by a previous owner. So it's just rust coming through underneath it, and it was just put on so thin that it is having issues. If it wasn't having the rusting issues, I probably would have left it alone, but we'll go ahead and strip it down. And what I did for that was just used a regular straight razor blade and just went to town on it. Probably took about 6 hours between the two of these to scrape it down with a razor and fully prep them for paint. If I had known it was going to take that long from the beginning, I probably would have looked into some kind of a chemical stripping agent. But I guess we'll just consider this money that I saved on the stripper. So anyway, you can see just how thin this stuff is by looking at the video there. Just all kinds of pinholes in it, and just really need to be removed and the rock rails recoated. So I won't bore you with the rest of that. Once I had all the rubberized bed liner scraped off, I grabbed the flap disc on an angle grinder and took off all the rust that was underneath it. And the reason I couldn't do this on the bed liner is because the rubberized texture would have just gummed up the flap disc, and I would have been going through flap discs left and right, and it just wouldn't have been worth it. So 6 hours later, after the beginning, I finally got to the angle grinder here, and pretty much just took it right down to bare steel. Turned out to be some gouges and some dings and dents that the Herculiner was hiding that I didn't realize, but there's nothing too terrible. I smoothed a lot of it out with the grinder, and what wasn't smoothed out is what it is, and I should be getting some use out of these and putting my own dings and dents in them. I didn't get any footage of it, but I did end up spraying these down with probably 5 or 6 coats of Rust-Oleum high performance enamel. Just picked it up from Walmart. And on the top surface of the rail, I ended up spraying probably 2 coats or so of the Rust-Oleum spray can bed liner, again from Walmart, just because these rails may occasionally be used as steps, and I think that will be a little better stepping surface than the regular paint. Now, the way these attach to the FJ, you can see there are 8 holes, factory holes in the frame that have nuts welded on the back side. So that's 16 total, 8 on each side. Since they're a little rusty from the FJ having been exposed to quite a bit of road salt, I just decided to run a tap through and clean up all the threads. And these are actually an 8 by 1.25 metric thread. And of course, if we're using a tap, we can't forget to use a little bit of cutting fluid. So I just went around to all 16 holes and ran it through and cleaned them up. And with a helping hand, I got the rock rail lifted up in place. That's a good time to call your buddy and have him come over, give you a hand with that. There is some adjustability on these rails, so I pushed them up relatively high, close to the body, with leaving minimal gap between the body and the rock rail, just for a little extra clearance. But the downside to this is if something strikes the rock rail kind of hard, it could flex into the body and damage the body. So I left enough room for a little bit of flexion, but not anything for a real hard hit. And typically when I'm driving off-road, what I've done in my Jeeps, I don't really use the rock rails to ride on or to bounce off of, which is a technique some people use. I prefer not to use that method and rather have them be sort of a bumper if I were to make a mistake or misjudge the height of an object I was driving over, or something like that. And of course we can't forget to put a little bit of anti-seize on these bolts, since like I said, I live in a salty climate. And we'll just snug them up, and that's pretty much it. So here's the final product. Didn't come out too bad. I probably have about $150 total into these between the $100 purchase price, gas going to pick them up, and the materials needed to refinish them. So that's not too bad, especially if you compare them to the price of new ones on the internet. They can get pretty pricey pretty fast, so I'm pretty happy with the price. And that's all we've got time for today. As always, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. And if you liked what you saw, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. And if you're not already, please feel free to subscribe.